You know, the other thing you have to keep in mind is this president has an obvious history now. He's been our president for a little over 2 years of throwing so much at the wall that it's hard to focus. Or he doesn't believe the American people are capable of focusing on more than one thing. That is why we must focus on what he's doing in foreign policy and domestic policy. They are not neatly compartmentalized, but you can just be certain about one common thread when this president acts. Abuse. Abuse. There's nothing to prevent, a president from thoroughly consulting with Congress about military operations. Certainly military operations of this sort. He hasn't thoroughly consulted with Congress because he knows he has Harry Reid in his back pocket. Harry Reid is a dead-ender. He just wants to know which team you're on, what uniform you're wearing, what color your hat is, and if it's the same as his, he's with you. It really doesn't matter who you are or what you say, he's with you. How can anyone possibly explain Obama's position on Iraq and square it with what he's doing in Libya? Was not Saddam Hussein ruthlessly and horribly murdering tens of thousands of his own citizens? Did he not use poison on the Kurds? This much is absolutely certain, right? And yet from day one and every day thereafter, Obama opposed it. Obama opposed it. And so did Reid. Reid will be remembered for one thing in all of history, for declaring his country losing a war in the middle of that war, which in fact we have not lost. How is it that these Democrats can turn on a dime, try to undermine our troops? At one point, almost 200,000 of them in Iraq. And I say undermine them while they defend what this president's doing today. How do they square that? They can't. We'll be right back. And you know, when your Secretary of Defense and your Secretary of State almost come to blows on national TV, I don't really mean physically, but they're kind of debating each other in front of the nation over Libya and what we're doing in Libya. I mean, that is the weirdest thing I've ever heard. It's absolutely bizarre. And I can do what all the other hosts do, play one clip against the other. Obama 2 weeks ago, last week, Obama 3 days ago. And the point's clear. The point's been made time and time again. But you have to cut through and find out what's going on. I don't disagree that there is some attempt here to help the Europeans with their oil issue. But I don't think that's the only thing. I think there's a more overarching ideological agenda. When you think of Obama, you must be thinking of the hard left ideological agenda. And for him, it's transformation. For him, the UN is a perfect body. The Security Council will be surrendering authority. Well, why the hell do we let the Chinese and the Russians make decisions for us? Can I ask you a question? When's the last time China went to the UN Security Council and asked for our support to defend any of their activities? Do they ever? When is the last time Russia went to the UN Security Council and sought a resolution trying to persuade us to support what they want to do, like invade Georgia? Do they run to the UN? No. No, they seek their own survival. They seek to advance their societies, even when they're throwbacks few thousand years. See the difference? No, these other countries don't run to the Security Council and beg America for permission or consent. So why do we do that? We do it because that's exactly what this president wants to do. Now, he's all powerful in his own mind, but he won't be there forever. So he's going to use all this remarkable power that he's abusing to weaken the nation. I believe it in my heart, no matter what the criminal front group Media Matters thinks. We'll be right back. Hello, my friends. This is hour 2, and in approximately Mr. Producer? 24, 25 minutes, we'll be hearing from Barack Obama 10 days after military operations began, and I'm telling you, there's absolutely no excuse for that. None. All the confusion and rambling. You just don't send our servicemen and women into battle of any kind unless you know what the hell you're doing in a way that you can communicate it. In a way that you can communicate it. Problem is he can't communicate it. If he communicates it, the jig is up. I'm sending us into battle to weaken us. A few more issues here. Listen to this from Chris Cillizza. I guess that's how you pronounce it. He's a blogger with the Washington Compost. If demographics is destiny, then Republicans may have a major political problem on their hands. Why? Because numbers released by the Census Bureau late last week showed massive growth in the nation's Hispanic population, a community that Republicans have struggled mightily to reach in recent years. Now, this is from a liberal blogger at the Washington Compost who seems to think that Hispanics are mostly liberal Democrats. And, of course, like, frankly, most poor people, when given an option to vote for individuals who promise them goodies, they're going to vote for those individuals, particularly if they don't speak English, and particularly if they're illiterate in two languages, because then they do not understand our founding documents and how our system works. And this has been one of the reasons why so many Americans have been urging security at the border so that we can decide who comes to this country, not because of their skin color, not because of their ethnicity, but because we need people who are going to come here, who are going to contribute to society, who are going to want to speak English, and who are going to want to be assimilated into our culture. Otherwise, we can't survive. I said, it's Monday. I said we're going to have to look at a lot of things going on at once, and that's just the way it is. So he writes, the numbers are eye-popping. Hispanics now account for more than 16% of the total population, making them the largest minority group in the country. More than half of all population growth in the United States over the past decade came from Hispanics. Perhaps most amazing is that nearly a quarter, 23% of all children aged 17 or younger, are Latino. This is a major problem for Republicans, says Cillizza, given that in 2008, John McCain won just 31% of the Hispanic vote. This is why some of these Republicans are panicking and pandering. But this is also why I argue that not only do we need to secure the border, but we need to ensure that people are going to speak English. We need to promote assimilation. And we need to explain liberty and property rights, as well as tyranny and big government, to everybody who's here legally. And those who are not here legally should be encouraged to leave by blocking, to the extent we can, educational, special privileges that some of these states are issuing, and treating them like as if they're citizens or welcome guests when in fact they're here illegally. And it's actually going to get worse. There's a piece in USA Today where it makes clear that these left-wing litigators, like the ACLU and so forth, they are going to litigate endlessly and try and bring cases in front of activist judges, particularly federal judges, to try and fight all efforts to enforce the border and to enforce laws within the United States that do not grant all kinds of privileges and rights to illegal aliens as if they are soon-to-be citizens. So no matter what Congress does, these leftist groups and these ethnic front groups are going to continue with their agenda, comprehensive immigration reform or not. And so here we even have a liberal blogger for the Washington Compost who's acknowledging what everybody sees. And he goes on. Of the 9 states where the Hispanic population grew by 100% or more between 2000 and 2010, McCain won 7 of them: Alabama, Arkansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, South Carolina, South Dakota, and Tennessee. That means that what had been reliably red states for decades are slowly, or not so slowly, seeing huge growth among what, for the moment, is a reliably Democratic constituency. Yes, we are importing Democrats. Add to that the fact that the 4 states with the country's largest Hispanic population, California, Florida, New York, and Texas, will count for 143 electoral votes for the next 10 years. That's more than half of the electoral votes a candidate needs to be elected president. California and New York are already reliably Democrat. Texas remains for now reliably Republican. Florida has become pivotal in the past 3 years. Past 3 presidential elections. Let me tell you, we lose Texas, it's over. It's over. I mean, it'd be a hard damn road to win the presidency if you start out with California, New York, and Texas as blue. And if Texas is blue, Florida will have already gone blue too. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush argued that there is no simple solution to reversing the GOP's fortunes among Hispanics. Quote, Republicans need to make a better effort at connecting with Hispanic voters. The more connected Hispanics feel to the Republican community, the more likely they are to turn out and support. Well, how do we do that exactly? Without appealing to an individual's sovereignty. That is, without appealing to individuals based on their God-given natural rights. How are we supposed to do this? Special privileges? Special entitlement program? Honestly, I don't understand. What exactly is the program that Jeb Bush has for quote-unquote Hispanics, and exclusively Hispanics, that will cause Hispanics to connect with Republicans? I have one. It's called the United States Constitution. People come to this country. They come to this country to escape the country they're in. Now, some come because they truly want liberty and opportunity. Others come because they're deadbeats, and we have our own deadbeats. But in order to appeal to those who are trying to leave their country and their culture and come to this country for something better, those people should be our people. Instead, we get Jeb Bush talking about, well, how do we connect with Hispanics? No, Jeb. How do we advance the cause of liberty and private property rights, which have not been respected in most of the societies that these people have left? There's only one philosophy that does that, and that's ours, the conservative philosophy. Moreover, you hear these politicians like Mitch Daniels say, put the social issues aside. And yet to understand conservatism, hell, to understand our founding and the Constitution, you don't put aside social issues. There it is. If God is a social issue, he's right there in the Declaration of Independence. We don't have natural rights but for God. Should we put him aside or her? And here's the point. Many individuals who are coming into this country from other countries are deeply religious, particularly Hispanics, most of whom are Catholic. So if we put aside quote-unquote social issues, as opposed to appealing on principled grounds, wherever we find them, wherever we can promote them, if we compartmentalize, how does that help us with people who come here, who we may be able to connect with based on something other than discussion about the budget, as crucial and critical as that is? But I'd be curious to know exactly what the agenda is. I mean, we've had 2 Bush presidents. We've had a Bush governor. They have not learned from Reagan and the 1986 amnesty, which did not work. It certainly didn't work as Reagan intended it to. Do we not learn from these things? And so the issue isn't whether you're hostile to any ethnic group. Of course we're not hostile to any ethnic group. We're talking about illegal aliens who are being welcomed into this country, particularly by one political party, one philosophy, because they seek to transform the society in every way conceivable. And if you do not control how many people are coming here, if in fact you not only don't encourage assimilation, but you encourage balkanization and tribalization, that's what you're going to get. And is that not what the Democrat Party is made up of anyway? Constituency groups, labor, this is how they claim it, civil rights groups, this group, that group. Is that really the way we want our politics to go? I don't think so. All right, we'll be right back. Juan in Queens, the great WABC. How are you, my friend?
Buddy, how you doing?
All right, sir.
Hey, to rebut, if you will, that blogger there on the Washington Post, I don't know that I agree with him, man. I think that Hispanics in this country, although I can't remember exactly what the statistic was on the last election. I think they voted for Obama 3-2, by a margin of 3-2, right? Something like that.
Right.
But I think, look, in California, Hispanics tend to be very liberal-leaning. Maybe that's just because, well, it's California. And in Florida, I know that Hispanics do tend to vote the conservative line. Maybe there's just more Hispanic home ownership in California. Rather in Florida. I don't know. But I think your point, the last point that you made was a good one. If you drive home the social values, Hispanics are very conservative folks. Those of us that were brought up the old-fashioned way. We believe in Jesus. We believe in, straight marriage. We don't believe in abortion. So
well, Juan, I have to go. I believe the conservative principled arguments are ripe for people who come into this country, many of whom are escaping tyranny. And that's the point, or abuse, or poverty, and so forth.